A waitress, an arrogant millionaire, and a grand piano. It began as an act of ruthless mockery, a deliberate attempt to break her spirit. But what unfolded next was far from predictable. In that fleeting moment, the atmosphere shifted. The room went still, and with one unexpected move, she didn't just silence the crowd, she shattered egos that had once seemed untouchable. What happened next will leave you in disbelief. On a Friday night, Bella Vista was alive with the hum of conversation, the clinking of fine crystal glasses, and the subtle scent of expensive cologne. In the corner, Elena Carter, a young waitress with neatly tied brown hair, weaved her way through the bustling tables. Every night she stood here, in the heart of luxury, but never truly belonged to it. Elena loved music. She dreamed of attending the New York Conservatory, of standing beneath the spotlight on a grand stage. But reality had different plans. Her world was a cycle of long shifts, unpaid bills, and a dream caged by circumstance. Then the glass doors swung open. A group of men entered, their presence commanding, their laughter tinged with arrogance. Leading them was Adrian Lancaster, a young billionaire, dangerously charming, and as untouchable as a god. He walked like a man who had never been denied anything in his life. And then his eyes landed on Elena. A smirk played on his lips. He had found his entertainment for the evening. Elena Carter did not belong in this world of luxury. She was born in a small town in Vermont, where winters stretched endlessly and maple trees burned red in the autumn. Her home was modest, but it was always filled with music. Her father was a carpenter, her mother worked in the town's bakery, but both believed that music was the one thing no one could take away. Elena learned to play the piano not through prestigious teachers, but through sheer instinct and passion. She listened to old compositions, taught herself on a battered keyboard her father had bought from a thrift store. By 12, she could master intricate pieces that others spent years perfecting. She played in church, at school, in the summer nights of the town's park. People told her she had a gift, but talent did not pay tuition. Her family couldn't afford the New York Conservatory. They couldn't even afford a proper grand piano. At 18, she had to put her dream aside, leave her hometown, and find a way to survive. And now she spent her nights weaving through tables filled with fine wine and wealthy patrons, walking past the grand piano that stood proudly in the center of Bella Vista. Every time she saw it, she wondered, if life had been just a little different, would she have been the one sitting there, her fingers dancing across the keys instead of serving men like Adrian Lancaster? But a dream, even when delayed, never truly dies. Tonight, Bella Vista was more dazzling than usual. The chandeliers cast a golden glow over delicate wine glasses. The soft clinking of silverware filled the air, and amidst it all, Elena moved through the table. Then a voice called out, pulling her back. "Waitress, come here for a moment." Table 6, Adrian Lancaster. She recognized him immediately. He was the type of man who thrived on control. Tailored suit, an expensive watch, a smirk that suggested he already knew how this conversation would end. He wasn't alone. 3 other men sat with him, equally well-dressed. But Adrian was the center of attention. Elena approached, keeping her voice steady. "How may I help you, sir?" Adrian leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, eyes gleaming with playful malice. "I hear you like music." She froze for a brief second. "Who told you that?" "I have my ways." He shrugged, as if it didn't matter. Then with a smirk, he added, "You play the piano, don't you?" She didn't respond right away. But the way he looked at her, testing, waiting for hesitation, made her uneasy. "So what if I do?" Adrian chuckled, turning to his friends. "She says she can play, but I'd bet we'll never actually hear her." Laughter erupted around the table. Elena's grip on the tray tightened. "I'm just a waitress," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Not an entertainer." Adrian wasn't about to let her go that easily. He gestured toward the grand piano that sat untouched in the middle of the restaurant. "If you really have talent, prove it. If not, maybe don't talk about it at all." The air around them changed. Other guests had begun to turn their heads, intrigued by the exchange. Elena could feel their gazes on her, the weight of their silent curiosity. She could walk away. She could refuse. But then Adrian delivered the final blow. Or maybe you're all talk and no talent. A sharp sting of pride flared within her. Elena held his gaze. Then slowly, she set down the tray on a nearby table. "All right," she said, "then I'll play." Elena stepped toward the piano, each footstep weighted with quiet determination. Her heartbeat drummed against her ribs, and for a fleeting moment, she felt the icy grip of nerves. But as her fingertips grazed the keys, the world around her began to blur. There was only her and the music. For a breath, there was silence. Then the first notes of Clair de Lune rippled through the air, soft as a whisper. At first her hands hesitated, uncertain, trembling. But as the melody unfolded, something within her unlocked, and the music began to flow, like a river breaking free from winter's grasp. She was no longer in Bella Vista. She was back in the small church where she first learned to play, tracing melodies from old sheet music with wide, eager eyes. She was back in the quiet nights when dreams felt like distant stars, unreachable and cold. But now, under the golden glow of chandeliers and the gaze of strangers, she wasn't just a waitress. She was an artist. The restaurant fell silent. Conversations faded. Wine glasses stood forgotten. And Adrian, the man who had worn arrogance like a second skin, sat utterly still, his smirk long gone. The notes of Clair de Lune weren't just music. They were Elena's soul laid bare, the proof that she was more than words, more than mockery. As the final chord resonated through the air, a hush lingered. No applause, no words, just the weight of something unspoken, something that had shifted. And in that moment, Elena looked up, straight in its place, something else, recognition. As the final note of Clair de Lune faded into silence, the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Then, like a wave crashing against the shore, a thunderous applause erupted. Patrons rose to their feet, eyes filled with admiration as they looked at Elena. Adrian remained seated. For the first time that evening, he had nothing to say. The smirk that had once played so effortlessly on his lips was gone, replaced by something more elusive, something even he couldn't quite define. A voice called out from the crowd, "That was incredible." More praise followed, yet Elena simply stood, offering a quiet nod of gratitude. She hadn't played for Adrian's approval, nor for the audience's applause. She had played for herself, for the dreams she once thought had withered away. At last, Adrian pushed back his chair and stood, adjusting his collar as if trying to regain his usual composure. He arched a brow, his tone deliberately casual. "I have to admit, you've got talent." Elena turned to him, her gaze steady, no longer holding hesitation or doubt. A small, knowing smile touched her lips as she responded, her voice calm but pointed. "Everyone has talent. The real question is how you choose to use it." A simple statement. Yet it struck like a blade, slicing through the thin veil of arrogance Adrian had always worn so well. He found himself at a loss for words, staring at her as if truly seeing her for the first time. The restaurant buzzed with newfound respect for the once overlooked waitress. But Adrian, the man who prided himself on never being outmatched, was the only one left without a smile. And from that moment on, he would never look at Elena the same way again. Elena returned to the serving station, but she was no longer the same girl she had been at the start of the evening. Her posture was stronger, her steps lighter yet filled with confidence. Every time she passed the grand piano, she no longer looked at it with silent longing. It was no longer a distant dream. It was a part of her, a part she had reclaimed. From across the room, Adrian still sat at his table, watching her in silence. The arrogance was gone. There was something else in his gaze now, something unspoken, a quiet admiration, perhaps even a realization he hadn't expected. An elderly gentleman stopped by, offering Elena a warm smile. "You don't just play the piano beautifully, you play with your soul." Elena smiled, bowing her head in gratitude. Yes, she was no longer just an anonymous waitress. She was an artist, one who had dared to stand up for her dream. Beyond the restaurant's windows, the night sky stretched wide, stars twinkling above. But this time, Elena no longer looked